Good afternoon. This is Violet, and I'm reading from my book, It Takes Two, a little bit me and a little bit you. And the chapter that I'm reading in today is my voice, and it's called Thank You No. Let me get this thing settled here. In the few months that I maintained ownership of the Cadillac, I found myself stalled on a couple of occasions and often had to call for assistance. There was a certain service station I frequented on Blackstone Avenue near my apartment. The attendant would always check the oil and fluids and wash the windows while pumping the gas. We certainly don't get any of that nowadays. On one such instance, a young man from a service station offered to fix the car for me for free when he discovered that my husband was in Vietnam. I felt there was something fishy in his offer and refused the gift. Then he made it very clear that he was interested in a relationship with me. I refused, telling him that I was not interested in cheating on my husband. It seemed that every time some young man knew my husband was away, he tried to put the make on me. I always kept my distance. I know there were many left behind who strayed. Many men came home from the war expecting to have a wife or a girlfriend waiting, only to find out that she had found someone new. One military wife we knew left her husband for another woman. The opportunities to stray were prevalent, but I was never tempted. I had no problem being faithful. This was not the first, nor would it be the last time young men tried to pick up on me when they discovered I was an Army wife. Before I was married, it seemed no one noticed me. Now, everywhere I went, men tried to pick me up. It was very annoying. It made me want to avoid service stations altogether. Unfortunately, service station visits were a necessary part of owning a car. The most memorable breakdown, and probably the one that occurred furthest from home, was due to the poor condition of my tires. I needed to obtain a military identification card to have access to military facilities, in case that I needed to shop at the commissary, the PX or post exchange, or obtain medical aid. Fresno had no military facility other than the National Guard Armory, and so it required me to go out of town to another military base for my identification card. Taking the Cadillac out of town was risky business. I could never trust it to get me anywhere without a flat tire or a breakdown. And this next chapter is called Becoming Official. I'm going to read it along with this one because they go together. Dell took care of the necessary paperwork to make me officially an Army wife, but it was up to me to get my military ID card. Having a military ID card was essential. Once we moved onto a military base, it would allow me entrance to all the places that required identification, which was just about everywhere. The newest place for me to get an ID card was Lemoore Naval Air Station, which sits in the middle of the desert about 40 miles southwest of Fresno. I gathered my paperwork and asked Dell's younger sister if she would like to come along to keep me company. His sister, who is a year and a few days older than I am, was 18 at the time. She was blonde, large-boned, and had a thin upper lip like Dell. She and I had become good friends, and she agreed. We took off in my Cadillac Coupe de Ville, even though I was a new driver and wasn't quite sure where I was going. There was no GPS then, only maps. I didn't have a map, so I got directions from my mom and began looking for Lemoore. It was still all a matter of finding Highway 41 and heading south. The trip to the base was a breeze. There wasn't much between South Fresno and Lemoore, so it was easy not getting lost. We arrived at the base without any trouble. I found a place to park in the large parking lot near the official buildings, and we went inside. Fortunately, I found the right building right away. I handed over my papers, marriage license, social security card, official military forms, filled out the paperwork, and had my picture taken. This process, as with many in the military, was a hurry up and wait situation. It took a couple of hours. When the task was finally accomplished, I put my new identification card into my wallet and headed for the parking lot, and then, hopefully, toward home. Unfortunately, when I arrived at the place where I had parked, I heard a hissing sound and discovered the rear driver's side tire was going flat. I had never changed a tire myself, but I had watched it being done on that particular car several times. I knew that I lacked the physical strength to do the job. There were a number of difficulties when it came to changing a tire on the Cadillac, the first of which was that the car was extremely heavy. It had been built to last. The jack that was in the car was not the one that belonged with the car. It was too short and had to be placed on a block of wood, which I carried in the trunk at all times, in order to lift the car high enough to remove the flat tire. The car had metal skirts over the tire wells that had to be removed before the lug nuts could be loosened. The spare tire, which was a size 17, was heavy and cumbersome. It was clear that we would need to enlist the help of someone, but who? I had not been to Lemoore before, and I knew no one on the base, so I did not know which way to turn. I was shy and a little backward when it came to approaching others, especially when asking for help. "What shall we do?" I asked Dell's sister. She suggested that we find someone in the parking lot and ask for help. Since most of the individuals coming and leaving were Navy men, I was afraid to approach them lest they get the wrong idea and think I was trying to solicit them for something other than help with my tire. Dell's sister was blonde and gorgeous, and I was a teenage redhead. I didn't think I was attractive, but I didn't want anyone to think we were trying to come on to them. After sitting there for quite some time trying to figure out how to get help, I finally decided to take a chance and walked around for a little while, not venturing too far from the car, and finally spotted a couple of young men exiting their car. I reasoned that the two were better than one and asked if they might be able to assist me. They were happy to help and got right to the task at hand. They removed the flat tire and took out the spare to replace it. When they set the spare on the ground, they discovered that it, too, was flat. Now, I was really in a pickle. I began to giggle. Unfortunately, when I was under stress, I tended to get the giggles. This was one of those times. The worse things got, the more I giggled. It was quite funny, but it wasn't. I had only $50, which was a quarter of my monthly income. I could not afford to buy new tires. I was 50 miles from my bank, so I could not even access my savings. The young sailors suggested that we take the two tires to a service station just outside the post and see if they could be patched. I was stumped again. I never went anywhere with strangers, yet I had to get the job done. The whole time, the words of Mama kept playing in my head: avoid all appearances of evil doing. To her, riding in a car with any man that was not your husband gave the appearance of evil doing. But what was I to do? I was giggling the whole time. Finally, I made a decision. If we were ever going to get home, we had to trust the guys. We all piled into their car and drove the few miles to the service station. The mechanic on duty said he would get to it as soon as he could. The young sailors were indisposed to wait with us or leave us stranded to find another ride back to the base in my car. Thankfully, they opted to stay with us, for which I am eternally grateful. There was a drive-in close by, and we had lunch while we waited for the tires to be patched. While we waited for our lunch order, I used the phone booth and called my mother to let her know that we would be delayed, since I knew she always worried when I was out alone. I could not stop giggling, and she said, "Violet, are you okay? Are you all right?" I was, but my car wasn't. 2 flat tires in one day. Between giggles, I assured her that I was only nervous. When the mechanic came back with the news, it was not good. He said that the tires were not fixable, and I would have to buy new tires. I asked how much new tires would be, and he informed me that he did not have any that large. Now my situation was getting desperate. I had no way to get back to Fresno, no tires, and no money. Finally, he checked his stock and discovered that he had one used tire that was not the size that I needed, but it might work temporarily, which he sold me for $20. He then patched up the other one as best he could and sent us on our way with an admonition to get new tires as soon as I could. The young men then took us back to the car. They jacked up the car, removed the metal skirt, and began to make the exchange. Then we heard it again, a loud hissing sound coming from the front of the car. I went to investigate and discovered that the front passenger side tire was quickly deflating also. I was hysterical with laughter. The situation was absurd. The young men quickly put the patched tire on and followed us back to the station on the highway, where I got the third tire patched and changed. 3 flat tires in one day. That was a record. By the time we were finished, the day was fairly well gone. I was so glad that Dell's sister had been with me. I do not know how I would have faced it alone. Thankfully, we made it back to Fresno safely. I never did get new tires. They were too expensive. I just kept patching them day after day. I may have put new inner tubes in them as they went flat. The good thing was that we were in the middle of a gas war, and gas was cheap. I could sometimes get gas for my car at 20 cents a gallon. Usually, though, it was more like 35 cents a gallon for the good stuff.